Welcome to our business track of the Data Science Salon YouTube channel. For this session, we have Erin, Shellman, Director of Data Science at Nordstrom. For retail businesses, inventory is the company's greatest asset and its largest risk. Competitor pricing, markdowns, and returns all threaten the margins that drive success, and in practice, inventory doesn't always move according to plan. To win in this highly competitive and rapidly evolving industry, it's essential to have a flexible toolkit that accurately produces forecasts and intelligently adapts to unplanned inventory dynamics. In this talk, Erin outlines how Nordstrom applies data science and machine learning to build a holistic view of inventory management, from assortment through stocking with intelligent size runs and ending with a customer experience that gets the right product to the right customer at the right time. Enjoy.
I'm Erin. I support customer and product data science at Nordstrom, data engineering, and our A/B test analytics team. And I'm really excited to be here and telling you a little bit about what we're working on in the area of data-driven merchandising and sort of buy planning in general. This is a really new area for us, and it's a really exciting area. And so let's do it. So I feel like it wouldn't be a retail talk if I didn't start with a slide describing how e-commerce is destroying brick and mortar retail. So here it is. Let's get it out of the way. It is true that e-commerce is changing kind of the landscape, and in particular, I think it's changing sort of customer expectations for retail. So specifically, online shoppers expect a really broad assortment, and they expect effectively infinite inventory depth. They expect super fast shipping and convenience. Increasingly, customers can shop directly with brands and labels, and they can kind of skip the retailer middleman, which can be a complicated challenge for retailers. And then customers want to try things on at home, and increasingly want to have frictionless returns when things don't work out. So I want to talk specifically about this first expectation around a broad inventory assortment and really deep depth, which is really just the topic of inventory management. So inventory management is something that a lot of labels and brands have struggled to adapt to and adopt. And in particular, in 2016, Ralph Lauren fell victim a bit to what's kind of known as the long tail of assortment, which is really sort of the 80-20 rule, that about 20 to 30% of your inventory drives 80 to 90% of your volume. And so the effect of that is that having a really long assortment actually kind of degrades and erodes your core offering and sort of your core brands. And that's kind of what they saw a couple of years ago. Likewise, just last year, H&M and Under Armour collectively sat on about $6 billion of unsold inventory. And that was in part also driven by the sort of long tail of assortment, a whole bunch of offerings, most of which are not really selling through, most of which people weren't interested in. And then that kind of dilutes the value, again, of your core offering. And sort of counterintuitively, at the same time, what's happening in our brick and mortars is that it's increasingly difficult when your assortment is so broad to have sufficient inventory depth in all of your stores. And so when customers go in, you might have a lot of stuff, but you don't have a lot of stuff in sizes for most people. And so that leads to kind of this broken customer experience, and that can drive people to shop more online, where they don't see those inventory limitations and they know that they can always buy a couple things and then send back the stuff that didn't work out. So it's kind of this cycle. So lest you think this is only an issue and sort of only a problem that people in retail businesses face, I wanted to just throw up this scary quote that was from this New York Times article about H&M, about what happens to all of this excess inventory if they can't offload it. And it's pretty horrifying to me. So this waste and this excess making this stuff, not only are people not buying it, but the way that they're dealing with it is in some cases just literally lighting it all on fire. So beyond just making companies run better and be more effective at their core business, this is kind of a problem that nobody on the planet can really avoid. And so I think it's well worth the effort to invest a lot of time and energy in having better economics here and doing better at buy planning and inventory management. Plus, I think it's super fun. So what I wanted to talk about with you today is give you sort of an overview of the entire sort of process at Nordstrom, and then the areas where our data science teams are starting to focus and starting to innovate and change the way that we do inventory management at Nordstrom. So this is a gross simplification of what is actually a really complicated process. But this kind of shows you and highlights where the key players are in this whole thing. So our main person here are the buyers, and they get information from a couple places. One is, for us, chiefly the fashion office.
So that's the place where they're looking for emerging trends and styles and fashion, and they're letting the buyers know kind of what to expect because of the lead times on this. This could be 6 months, a year in advance. So you really have to anticipate where things are going. So that might be listening to your influencers and your celebrities. To us in analytics and in data science, and we're the ones that are telling them sort of how things have been performing in the past and what we think might perform well in the future. So then with all of that information, they do things, they go to the vendors and they do what's called cutting a PO, a purchase order. So they'll say, here's the things that I'm interested in buying, and here's how much I want. And so this is really a simplification here in this area, because this is actually a lot of back and forth. Sometimes we'll ask for a certain number of units and we don't get everything that we ask for. And so this can be a little bit confusing, and it's not quite as linear as what it looks like here. So with that, the sort of up quantification, then we'll distribute to size, and then ultimately we'll distribute those size runs into locations. And so that includes our stores, and that includes our distribution centers that ultimately flow out through orders placed on the website to our customers. Finally, our customers shop with us, they click on things, they add things to bag, and we collect all of that information and then reason about it and try to intuit what's going to work out in the next round, and that cycle kind of continues. So I'll tell you now a little bit about where we're working to kind of innovate in each of these areas. In the first part of this little kind of funnel here involves the fashion office, us, the buyers, and kind of the vendors. And that's the area of assortment planning, and it's all about getting the right mix. So buy planning or assortment plan, or buying the right product assortment, is really about anticipating emerging trends and styles, and then estimating as well as you can customer demands for those trending styles. And historically, and not even historically, largely, this has been sort of an art that involves a lot of trend forecasting, again, trying to anticipate a year or so in advance what's going to be popular. Things like trade fairs, actually going to New York for these things called market appointments, where they actually see the garments, they touch things, they think about the quality of fabrics, and then seeing the stuff on models in showrooms and in fashion shows, taking all of that information and leveraging the relationships they have with vendors to decide what they're going to carry for that season. In our world, where we're thinking and where we're moving towards is blending that kind of fashion authority and fashion knowledge that they get from the relationships and from going to New York and seeing it on models with data-driven tools really for portfolio management. So when you think about that long tail of the assortment, it's not like you can just lob off that long tail and say, well, we're just going to carry these 4 things that sell the best. Assortment is critical because those things drive people, they drive trips. Like, everyone likes white t-shirts, but if you had a store of just white t-shirts, no one is going to find that compelling and they're not going to come in. So it's not as simple as that, but it is about kind of finding the right balance of your critical core offering and then the seasonal pop that's going to bring people in. And so we're doing this now through a strategic partnership with New Order. And so New Order, this is a shot from their website. They're actually a vendor that sits in between our buyers and the vendors. And basically what they do is they streamline the process, browsing product, and then ultimately executing on the product, cutting the POs, and then doing the quantification piece. And you can kind of see that here. In effect, what it does is gives the buyers kind of like a shopping experience. They get a lot of really detailed product information, and then they can select and sort of indicate intent to buy in advance of their market appointments when they actually look at the garment. So it helps them prioritize their time From a data science perspective, what it does is it gives us a ton of product detail information that's very similar to the type of product information that we show to our customers on Nordstrom.com well in advance of us committing to buy anything. And that's super exciting. So that's things like long form product descriptions, category descriptions, information about sizing and fit, product images. And the power of that is that those are the entities, those are the data flowing through our personalization algorithms for customer. And now we can use those algorithms for quantifying our buys. So this is kind of where our head's at. This is my wish list for things I want. We're not doing all of this right now, but this is where we're going with this. Ingesting all of this rich product data at a new order allows us to do all kinds of things like create abilities for cross-catalog search, which is what I'm really excited about. If I'm a buyer and I'm trying to think about what my portfolio is, I want to be able to do all kinds of things like identify multiple price points for a similar style. So if I know that the snakeskin booty is going to be the hottest fad in the back half of 2019, which it is, I might want to have that obviously in sort of a luxe category, but I also want to have it across all these price points to make sure that my addressable audience for what I know is going to be a hot trend is as big as it can possibly be. This could help me search through across catalogs and be able to find those. Similarly, we could use it to measure duplicative inventory to make sure that we aren't in a position where we have too much assortment, too much breadth, where we won't be able to have the budget to have the depth that we actually need. And then the things I'm super excited about, because they dovetail nicely with what I'll talk about next, are the ability to forecast sales performance prior to any commitment to buy. If we could kind of ballpark how we think things are going to perform, then that's also super helpful for balancing the portfolio. And potentially reusing some of the segmentation work that we use to support applications and marketing instead to estimate audience sizes for product. That's my wish list. Here's an example of something we've actually done. So this is a feature on the website called Looks. And what Looks is basically a style of recommendations that constructs outfits, and it really serves to give customers styling inspiration and styling ideas when they're looking at the product detail pages for an element in here. So I might be looking at the pants in this case. Looks, if you can kind of see these little dots here, those are the little swiping dots. So the feature gives you the ability to swipe through and kind of swap out different product. And from our perspective, that's mostly so that when things go out of style, we'll backfill with something that is still kind of fits the look, is similar enough, and is actually available to buy. So that's a look substitution, and that relies on sort of a combination of text features and visual similarity. We took that same algorithm and we applied it instead of to product that was live on site to historical inventory over the course of a year or so, and to ask the question of how duplicative our inventory was so that we could hopefully make adjustments. And we found that indeed it was actually getting more duplicative over time. And so that actually allowed us to be able to make some pretty rapid in-place decisions to combat that, sort of falling victim to the long tail issue, and kind of consolidate some of our inventory. So just an example of using a personalization algorithm in a context that's a little bit different than what it was initially made for, to help us understand a little bit about assortment. And this is just a picture sort of what this looks like. So these are two different seed items. This is the seed item, and these are all the things that the algorithm identified as duplicative. And you can see, at least in this case, it's quite good. This, I think, we're actually looking at our bridal business, so I don't know if this one is as compelling. But this one, we probably don't need so many blue mid-thigh short sleeve dresses. Sorry if you disagree. So that's assortment planning. That's kind of what we're thinking. The second piece of this, or big chunk of this whole workflow, is really all about units. How much of, at this point, when I'm done with assortment planning, I know what I want to buy and what I'm intending to buy, but how much of it do I need to buy? And that's the problem of quantification, or unit quantification, which is really trying to find the right in-stock sweet spot. Quantification is really hard to get right, and I think operating both a brick and mortar And a big e-commerce business makes that even more complex because your inventory has to be in lots of places all at the same time to meet customer demand. It's really hard to get right because it requires you to have pretty detailed knowledge about product lifecycle intent. So how long were you expecting this product to actually be kind of active and available for sale? So if you think of like a replenishment type of thing, like a white t-shirt, that's forever. Versus a seasonal pop, that might be a 6-week timeline. So you need to know that and have a way to capture and a way for buyers to express that intent. The other piece of that is the ability to have highly accurate forecasts of demand and at different levels of granularity so that you can apply it in different application areas. So channel, location, category, subcategory, maybe actually down to the item level. And the other piece of this, even if you're really good at all of this, the other piece that's critical is sort of the supply chain piece. It's not that helpful to be really good at planning if you don't have a supply chain that is actually able to execute on those plans. And so this was just a cool example of something that Macy's, I think sort of recently started implementing called hold and flow inventory management, where basically they give a sort of an initial allocation to the stores, they hold back the rest in a distribution center, and then as those things start selling through, they'll flow them out. And what I really like about this is that it helps them, or it helps anybody, break out of sort of this horrible cycle for when low-performing stores, low-volume stores, I should say, get planned down, and then they have low volume because there's not enough inventory. So they get planned down, and then they have low volume because there's not and it kind of spirals out. This gives them the flexibility to give them an initial allocation and then let stuff flow in and let the stores actually try. So you don't have empty shelves and have a gross looking customer experience. So, I think I got rid of that in a recent one. What we're doing here basically is we're moving out of an older legacy, labor-intensive, difficult to use, and very complex kind of Excel VBA world workflow that's largely guided only by historical sales, and we're moving it into one that's guided by forecasts of demand projected into the time when we think that those products are going to land and be live to the customers to buy. And what's really exciting about this approach, besides that it's a lot more data-driven, is that it's allowing us to blend and really take advantage of the fact that we do have brick-and-mortar stores and a digital business. And we can look at the signals and sort of the discrepancy in signals between those two businesses to try to do things like estimate the opportunity cost for not having things in stock, or try to find those mismatches where we think we could have sold through more inventory in a store if we had had it. And so this is a complicated plot, but what you're looking at here, this is one full-line store. This is our digital business. It's all of Nordstrom.com. This is inventory. This is for an entire product. This is for an entire catalog, or category of shoes. I think these are athletic shoes. You have inventory here, and then you have the sales velocity. You basically have the derivative of the inventory here. So you can see as inventory flows in, the slope of that is positive, so I have these big jumps, and as it starts to sell through, I go negative, and that indicates to me a fast sell-through. And for us, what we look at this and we see that the demand or the interest from customers is really different between the digital and the stores, which might indicate to us, like particularly with these extreme size distributions that we probably under-inventoried, that there was actually maybe demand that we left on the table, but it was extinguished in the store because we simply ran out of inventory. So we're using both of those signals to kind of look for opportunities for adding inventory to stores. The other cool thing about this work that's very much in progress is that the way that we approached it was really kind of a scrappy pilot-based approach, and we took our forecasting outputs and we mimicked exactly the same output that flows through the system today so that we could just drop it into place, it gets picked up, and the system works as normal. What the benefit of that is not really a data science issue, but it's allowed us to decouple the change management with the sort of the process and the business process from the methodology and the data science work so that we can really focus on our strength, chalk up a bunch of wins by being scrappy, and then have tailwinds when we come back and want to actually make the process itself more efficient. So it's allowing us to build credibility and focus and then come back and fix what is ultimately probably going to be the bigger, harder problem, which is changing this big process. What am I doing? Okay, that's quantification. And then, so this last area of focus for us is really all about the customer and the last mile here. So personalization, moving high-risk inventory. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition of things because personalization is typically not really talked about in the context of inventory management. Usually, we're talking, especially at Nordstrom, we're talking about it through the lens of customer experience, helping customers navigate a really deep catalog and find the thing that they're looking for and have a great experience. We still want that to be true. But we can also use it as a tool to move out high-risk inventory that's at high risk of markdown. So even if you got assortment planning, you nailed it, you nailed quantification, you're so good at this, even when that happens, things go wrong and product doesn't always move like you expect it to. You're going to get stuck sometimes with kind of high risk, oh, that's helpful, high risk inventory. And broken inventory is part of the normal product life cycle. Stuff that's popular, it sells through, you're going to end up sort of at the end of its life with a bunch of kind of spotty size and color combinations because it's selling through. So what are you going to do with that in sort of the last mile? To avoid markdowns and try to sell things at full price, which is usually or almost always our goal. So what we're doing is trying to make all of our personalization tools, all of our digital features much more truly personalized and much more aware of sort of inventory position. So sort of recently, and anecdotally, actually, we were hearing that a lot of our search and browse results in the top ranked positions were showing broken inventory. So these are products where when you click through, most of the sizes were not available. And so when you think of the customer experience, if that's happening in like the top 4 things, they're going to stop clicking at some time. So it's a bad customer experience. So here we're looking at a search and browse page for, or the category landing page for dresses. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4 top ranked items and dresses. And here we're looking at brokenness over time for the same 4 ranked. And this is actually 2 product categories, but let's say the red are these dresses here. And indeed, over time, what we were seeing was that it's very volatile because these change day to day or hour to hour as clicks change them and as new inventory comes online. But yeah, frequently in our top positions, we were showing a lot of broken stuff. And in this case, broken, 1 means that you're fully in stock across all of your SKUs. So if you had 4 SKUs across 4 sizes and you had them all, you'd have 1. If you were missing 1, so you only had 3 of the 4, you'd be at 0.75. And if you were completely sold out, you'd be at 0. So yeah, we were showing a lot of broken inventory in some of these really big category pages over time. And so what we're doing is kind of going back and refocusing to make adjustments to the algorithms here so that we can kind of decay products down as they go out of stock, start suppressing them for most people because usually they go out of stock and the core size runs, and then start boosting them for the people for whom we're really confident that they actually are this size. So we have a lot of expressions of intent and we can infer a lot about customers based on what they buy. And if we know that they're one of those extreme sizes that are still remaining in inventory, then this isn't a broken item from their perspective. And so we can boost those specifically for that group and try to sell and get more of this sort of broken stuff in front of people for whom it's relevant and sell it and hopefully sell it through at full price. So that's kind of where we're focusing on the last mile of merchandising. So that's it. That's the sort of the end-to-end ecosystem. So I'll leave you with a couple closing tips for driving massive change. If you work at a really big enterprise and you think about these big legacy systems, you might be a little skeptical about the ability to actually change and make these big material changes. And but I'm seeing it happen, so I'm not skeptical anymore. And the things that I've seen that have worked so far is that yeah, it's a really big and a complex ecosystem, but these really play on each other. And so if you can focus and really deliver value in one, it's going to flow through and you're going to get value kind of across the board. So stay focused. Similarly, tackle one thing at a time. So there's this big business process that needs to get changed, and then there's this data-driven thing that needs to change too. Figure out how you can focus on doing the thing you're best at and then come back later to the business process, because you're going to need a lot of help for that anyway. I love this one. This is true in anything, I think. Look for opportunities to reuse data and to reuse algorithms in contexts that they weren't initially intended for. Like personalization as a way to describe portfolios of product was not the initial intent, but it's been a really powerful tool for us, and now we're not starting from scratch. And then finally, listen more than you talk. Don't come into a room with people who have been in this business for a super long time and tell them you're going to solve all their problems with data overnight. A lot of these old processes and systems exist for a reason, and those decisions were probably made before you even came to the company. So make sure that you're empathetic to the problems they're solving and really learn how your business works before you come in hot with data advice for them. And you'll make more friends that way, and then they'll make a path for you to succeed anyway. So that's it.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.
We do have a few questions, starting with one from Charles. Are you able to, and there wasn't a sad emoji with us, but I feel like I should infer one. Are you able to briefly talk about how data influenced the closing of the Northgate Mall, Nordstrom?
I don't know if it did. I thought that was the NHL.
Okay. That's it.
Go blame them.
Sorry, Charles. How do you conduct A/B testing for inventory management? This is from Liang. Different area products using different strategies. I imagine there would be so many co-founders to deal with.
Yeah, that's a hard one, and that's something we're kind of grappling with now. So one of the things you can't see on that diagram is the lead time and the time in between each of those hops. So the things that we've been delivering in the area of quantification for the last 2 or 3 months, that product won't actually land in front of customers until February. So it's really hard for us to get a sense of how this stuff is going to perform. Our goal right now is really to, for one, just do no harm, do it at least as well, and we're confident we can do that, to save our buyers a whole bunch of time in the process so that they don't have to do it, and we can demonstrate that right away. And then the other thing that we're doing is just kind of looking at the side-by-sides with historical stuff, taking our forecasts and projecting from something that has already happened, looking at sort of the difference between what we would have suggested and what they did, and whether we thought they could have sold through more things, and kind of trying to ballpark it that way. But it's really like the A/B tests have 6-month lead times. We won't know until next year really how some of this stuff is performing.
Okay, I'll go with one more question. How do you build an original look? Asks Morgan. Are those outfits manually put together, or and then find other visually similar items, or do you have models that put them together?
Like for the looks algorithm? Yeah.
Like animals.
Yeah, a lot. I was like, me? Well, the looks algorithm is actually largely done by people. A whole bunch of stylists create a lot of those looks, and so that the actual construction of those outfits is largely not that data driven right now. But then the algorithms and stuff for swapping and kind of scaling it that way are. But yeah, sort of the seed composition is not.
Okay, great, thanks. I think it's time for our next speaker now. One more question. So Luke wants to know, given how unique or generic each item has the potential to be, how do you decide how unique to make them during forecasting? For example, you could use a lot of data to predict all shoes, or use limited data to predict a similar shoe in a single size. How do you balance that granularity? Yeah,
that's a great question. And that's another area where I feel like we're really relying on a lot of the tools that we've developed in personalization to power that stuff too. So we have, through visual similarity and sort of these affinity metrics that we compute to measure how similar things are, we use that to do things like make recommendations, like if you like this, you'll like that. And we can use that same thing to kind of infer like items where we, in one scenario, it's a brand new item. We have no idea how it's going to perform, but it's just like this other, or it's very similar to this other one that's high volume. And because we have these already computed for this digital application, we can use those to kind of sub in and use those forecasts in place. But yeah, it's a hard problem.
Great, thanks. So thanks again to Erin.
Thank you.
That was a presentation by Erin Shellman, Director of Data Science at Nordstrom. Erin shared how Nordstrom applies data science and machine learning to build a holistic view of inventory management, from assortment through stocking and ending with a customer experience that gets the right product to the right customer at the right time. If you enjoyed this presentation, make sure to sign up for our channel below. Thank you.